Hi everybody and welcome to this surprise 15th edition of What Am I Listening To and Why. This is the review show where I take the last 6 LPs I've listened to, throw them back upon the turntable and give you a couple of minutes chat on what I thought of them. First up today is the Blondie first album, Blondie. Now this is not the Parallel Lines Blondie, that's still 2 albums away, so this is them kind of finding their feet. It sounds a little bit like a sort of girl group of the late 60s. It's certainly got that kind of production, and the songs are very much like that as well. It doesn't really know, Blondie don't really know what they are yet, but it's the classic lineup. It's got Christine, Clem Burke on the drums, who's very clearly he's on the drums. This band are still going. They've been going for 50 years. One of the great things about Blondie is Debbie Harry's fantastic, incredibly beautiful, talented, but she doesn't really use her sexuality that much in the whole thing. It kind of relies on something else. Well, certainly not compared to the pop stars of today. The first single, Ex-Offender and In the Flesh, are on this record, and they're okay. The whole record's kind of okay. There's a bit much filler in it. One to avoid, Little Girl Lies. That's a horrible, insipid song. If you could skip that, get the CD so you can skip that. As I say, Blondie still going. I saw them at Glastonbury. They were a travesty. Debbie, 100 years old, scraping about the stage with a bunch of session musicians and Clem Burke. It's not really Blondie. Time to pack it in, love. It really is. But this is worth it if you can get it cheap. It's nice, organ-led pop music. I'd give it... It's a 5.5. We're going to stay in America for record number 2. This is from San Francisco. The Tubes with their, what album? 4th album, Remote Control. This was a sort of concept album, supposedly about a TV addict or something. You see the babies being watched by the TV. The back features the Celebrity Squares thing. The Tubes were actually on I think a couple of them were actually on Celebrity Squares at one point. The single from this was Prime Time, which came out in white vinyl, just like everybody had it. This is far from their best work. Todd Rundgren produced this, and you can hear it because the whole thing is just too grandiose. That's not what I like about the Tubes. It's not that big thing that they're going with. I like them as a good rockin' band making humorous pastiche music, which they're fantastic at. By this point, they're almost becoming the thing that they used to kind of take the piss out of. The vocals are too lush, everything's too big. This is not white punks on dope. By 1979, man, it was all over for them. Their best work was behind them, and their worst work was in full flow. Really past their best. I think later on, Todd Rundgren, he produced an album for them called Love Bombs, which I bought, and it is fucking dreadful. Don't even go near it. Don't really go near this. It has good bits. Prime Time's good. It starts well. By the time you get halfway through the first side, you start to go, what am I listening to? Fucking Total. You know, it is a bit like that. So, yeah, Tubes past their best. Still a great live band. Still a great live band now. I don't know who's in it. Fee Waybill does it kind of part-time. He sells real estate for a job. I've got a lot of affection for them, but as for listening to the records that much, unless it's the earlier ones, no. The Tubes, Remote Control, I'm giving it a 4.5 or a 4. Record number 3, back in the UK now from 1980. This is Atletico Spizz 80, Do a Runner. If you're not familiar with Spizz, you probably are, but you know, Where's Captain Kirk was their sort of the biggest record. No Room is my favourite single. They've had loads of different names. Spizz Oil, Spizz Energy, the Spizzles, Spizz Sexual at one point, and eventually Buck Spizz. That's not true. This is not an instantly accessible record, really. This isn't no new wave punk rock, chuck it out thing. This is actually a pretty amazing album, and it gets better and better with every listen. I started listening to it last week. I just picked it up. Never had it before, and I really didn't like it. The first time I listened to it, I thought, that's a mess. But the more you listen to it, it starts to click with you, and it's actually really good. It's really good in the same way that Beefheart is really good. And I think if you listen to Beefheart, you'll understand. It takes a while, but it's very, very rewarding. My favourite tracks on it are, there's a tiny, tiny short track called Clocks Are Big, Machines Are Heavy. It's about 10 seconds long, and that's fantastic. And the final track, Airships, is a really long track, and it's like a reward. It's like, this is your meat, and Airships is your pudding. It's great. I think Spizz was going for trying to get into the Guinness Book of Records for the most amount of names on the different record releases. I'm not sure. Anyway, he didn't get it. So, yes. If you've got the time to love it, and it does take time, well, certainly me, not instant, then I would definitely recommend this. Spizz, Atletico Spizz 80, Do a Runner, 7.5. Record number 4 is from 1997. This is an American band called Sleater-Kinny. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And their album Dig Me Out. Now this came out on Kill Rock Stars Records. I like that title, but I think this one is on Sub Pop. Anyway, I'd never heard of this before I started listening to it the other week. I really wanted to like it because I like the way it looks and it felt good in the hand, and I really wanted to like this record a lot more than I did. Apparently this is something to do with the Riot Girl movement, I don't know what that is, from the 90s. There was 2 singles on it, One More Hour and Little Babies, but I couldn't tell you what they are. I find it really hard to differentiate between anything on this record. What you're hearing now, which is the lead track, is what everything sounds like. There's no bass on it, no bass guitar on it, and I don't, some bands do that. I don't think it helps. I think it's better with a bass guitar. It's very much American college radio from the 90s. But for me, it's same. And it's this, which is not terrible. It's okay for 10 minutes. I don't think there's any fantastic songwriting on it. It's actually sounding better now than it has done for the last couple of listens, but it all just kind of flies by with me. Shouty girly band stuff with all your worthy lyrics. It is worthy, but ultimately it's a bore. I'll give it 4 for the bore. Record number 5, probably people are going to be shouting at me for this. I was playing this last night and I thought I should include it. Is the Beatles' final album, Let It Be. This is the last hurrah, the last proper album from 1969. The previous album to this had been Let It Be, and that's a horrible, under-rehearsed, undercooked pile of shite, remixed by Phil Spector, who made a turd even worse. So George Harrison was not impressed. George Martin was not impressed. But he agreed to do this record with him as long as they did it like a proper Beatles record, and they did. And it's a great album. I could live without Maxwell Silver Hammer, which apparently is the longest recording session in Beatles history. It went on for weeks. Everybody hated it. And I could live without Octopus's Garden for obvious reasons of it being awful. Um, but this album, it proves that even at the fag end of their career, the Beatles still had it. Even the photograph's great. This is the time when George didn't want to do anything. They were putting all these ideas forward for what the photograph should be, and it was like, shall we go to Everest? I think we're going to call this album Everest at one point, if you can imagine. George, will we go to Everest and get the photograph taken? No, I don't want to do it. George, shall we go outside and walk across the crossing? No, I don't want to do it. He was hellish at that point. He didn't want to do anything. This is when they were going to do the one gig, and it was like, shall we do Madison Square Gardens? No, I don't want to do it. Shall we go on the roof and just play on the roof? No, I don't want to do it. George, you've got to do something. You're in the band. Anyway, this is a great record. The Sweeter Songs, side 2, from sort of Sun King right up to the end, is like a album in itself, and it's a great listen. Possibly their best LP. I'm going to say, yeah, I think it is their best LP, and I love it, and I couldn't live without it. And I'm going to give this a 9. Final record number 6 today, is by the great British band Spizz. Now, this is their first LP, and it's a really, really strange thing because there are no songs of note on it whatsoever. It was produced by John Cale from Velvet Underground, and when he got them in the studio, the first thing he told them to do was throw away all their songs, all the great pop songs that they've been writing and playing live for the last 2 or 3 years, and write a whole new set of new songs for this first LP. That is possibly the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, but that's what happened. And they did it because they didn't know any better at the time. Consequently, you've got an album of rushed so-so material. There is nothing on this record that would hint at what Spizz were going to become, which is one of the greatest singles bands of all time. Love them or hate them, you have to admit that. John Cale, he said to Chris Difford, your lyrics are a bit weak. Chris Difford's lyrics are a bit weak. I think you should start writing about muscle men. Anyway, so that's what he did. Chris Difford wrote about muscle men, hence the cover and stuff. It's completely fucking bizarre and off the wall what they did. The only song on here not produced by him is Take Me I'm Yours, which sounds like Spizz and was a hit. John Cale must have been eating magic mushrooms for lunch to make this, and the band, only because they were young guys and didn't know any better, when a grown-up comes in and tells them what to do, they did it. So this is an absolute disaster of an album. It's unmemorable as hell. There's nothing on here that you're going to remember. But it's worth a listen for that, to see how things can go wrong. If they made this album now, if Spizz came now and turned this in as their first album, they'd be finished. No record company would give you a second album. Thankfully, back in that time, you could have a second album and a third album and blah, blah, blah. But this is amazing. Spizz, it's a 2.5 to a 3, but it's really worth hearing. Starter track. Thank you very much for listening for this little surprise episode. I was going to stop doing it, and then I thought, fuck it, I'll do it. I don't know if you've noticed this. This is a burn. This is what happens when you drink a bottle and a half of wine and then decide to taste the gravy from your steak pie that you're making, and it's as hot as lava. Okay, I'll do another one soon. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'd like to see your comments. Maybe you disagree with me, maybe you've got thoughts on things I've said. I'd like to see your comments. Please share it around. It'll be on YouTube later, but it's here on Facebook now. Please share it around and tell me what you think. Thank you very much.